Hey everyone, it's the Doom Dog, and I think it's about time we dive back into the universe of Halo. The first three Halo games were huge moneymakers for Microsoft, and Master Chief became the face of the Xbox. Microsoft was not going to abandon their cash cow just like that. Even though the story was over, we all knew that there was bound to be more at some point. And we did get more in the form of a spin-off title called Halo 3 ODST. Unlike the three main games, this did not have the Master Chief in it at all. How would the series fare without the main character? Let's take a look and find out. Not a lot about the development of this game is known. We do not have a documentary on the making of this game like we did with the previous games. All we have mostly are just some Vidocs. Here's what we do know though. After Halo 3, Bungie wanted to become an independent studio. Microsoft offered them a deal. Make 2 more Halo games and sell the Halo franchise, and they would let Bungie become an independent developer again. Bungie agreed to this, and they set about making those 2 games. This wound up being one of those 2. Halo 3 ODST was originally revealed at Tokyo Game Show 2008 as Halo Recon. At the time, the team was calling it a standalone expansion to Halo 3. It is unclear if this was going to count as one of those 2 games to fill in the contract, but it might not have been. They might have just been counting it as an expansion to Halo 3 instead of a full new game, in which case it might not have counted toward the contract. Unknown to us at the time, Bungie was working on a game called Halo Chronicles. It was going to be an interactive, story-driven experience, and a team was working on it with Peter Jackson at a studio in New Zealand. Hidden Xperia has a video on this game with some details on what it was going to be like, if you are interested. I will leave a link in the description below for you to check out. As far as I'm aware, no gameplay of this actually exists. Anyway, the project was cancelled in 2009, and the team that was working on it was transferred over to the Halo Recon project to help with it. It was renamed Halo 3 ODST, and it had a smaller team working on it. Most of the team at Bungie was working on the larger project Halo Reach at the time. This team had 14 months to hammer it out. That is a short development cycle. Such short development times can often lead to things like products feeling rushed, or them being incomplete or buggy, or other such things going wrong. Was that the case with Halo 3, or did it turn out well? Let's take a look. The game starts with an opening text crawl. If you played the previous games, you will know a lot of what is presented in this. The year is 2552, and humanity is at war with an alien religious group known as the Covenant. Humanity was losing, but Earth was a carefully guarded secret until Covenant forces suddenly arrived during the events of Halo 2. And we still get no explanation on how they found its location, despite the first game being partially about keeping the location hidden from them. The UNSC hatches a plan to have orbital drop shock troopers, or ODSTs, you know, those guys that dropped onto the ring with you in the pods in Halo 2, onto the Covenant carrier in low orbit over New Mombasa and take it out. The ODSTs are considered the best Marines that the UNSC has to offer, outside of the Spartan super soldiers, of course. The game proper opens with the main character resting away from the squad. Dutch, Mickey, and Romeo, 3 of your squad mates, are standing over a hologrammatic map of the city and discussing the mission when Buck, the squad leader, enters the scene with a woman in tow. Her name is Veronica Dare, and she has secret orders that she is not about to tell you about. Buck seems rather short-tempered, like something is upsetting him. Romeo approaches the main character, a nameless protagonist known simply as the Rookie, and smacks him with the rifle to wake him up. Dutch pushes him aside and hands you a rifle. Everyone climbs in their pods, and the pods close, and you prepare to drop down to the Covenant ship below. During the drop, Dare notes that the Covenant forces are gathering beneath the carrier. She instructs the group to alter course. They are confused because this puts them off course of the Covenant ship. It seems that the mission has changed. The Covenant carrier jumps into hyperspace like we saw in Halo 2, cluing you in on exactly when this takes place. And the resulting shockwave knocks another pod right into yours, cracking your windshield. The Rookie reaches out and holds his door closed. The blast from the jump knocks everyone off course, and your squad is scattered around the city. You crash down to the surface and black out. You wake up 6 hours later, suspended above the city's streets.
I try not to be unconscious too long. It's super bad for you.
Hit every button on your pod to launch the door off of it onto the streets below and hop out of the pod down onto the streets. It's nighttime and you need to locate your squad mates. The very first thing that you will want to do is make contact with the AI that controls the city, called the Superintendent. This gives you a map of the city and opens it up to you. It also gives the last known location of your ODST squad mates. The first one that you are likely to find is Dare's helmet. Finding it puts you in control of Buck immediately after drop. Veronica contacts Buck and asks if he is okay. You open your pod and go tumbling out. Veronica is a spy for the UNSC. The two of them used to date. They broke up years ago. She says she picked Buck and his squad for her orders because he is the best soldier that she knows. She also mentions some sort of promise he made to her years ago, but the game never really explains what that is. Head out to rescue her. Buck runs into a group of soldiers fighting against the Covenant. Join the fight. He comes across a bunch of dead elites that are surrounded by dead brute. He asks Veronica about this, and she says that it's classified. While this does line up with the events of Halo 2, I have to question it. This takes place immediately after the jump, and the Covenant Civil War did not happen until some time later after the jump. Is this a little too early in the story for this to be taking place? Furthermore, how did the brutes back on Earth receive word from the hierarchs that the elites were being cast out in the first place? Later on, Veronica informs you that her pod is under attack. You had better make your way through the Covenant as quickly as you can to her location. When you do find her pod and open it, she is not inside. A new squid-looking creature approaches you, and it appears that it's about to attack you. It is holding Dare's helmet, and it gets sniped by your squad mate. It blows up, sending the helmet flying to where the Rookie found it. The sniper turns out to be Romeo, and he figures that the creature killed Veronica. They set off to find the rest of the squad. The game switches back to the Rookie on the streets at night. Set out to find the next item. The next one that it directs you to is drone fighter optics. When you find it, the game switches to Dutch an hour after drop. He landed on a beach. He makes his way further inland and comes across a group of Marines. They ask for help overturning a warthog, so help them out and take a ride. Dutch gets contacted by another group of Marines. They need backup, so head over there and help them out. After helping them out, move further up the beach when the commanding officer contacts you. He says that their goal is to take the area where the Covenant carrier was. Later on, you see the new Bombasa space elevator get destroyed. The slip space rupture weakened the support rings, causing it to collapse. Credit where it is due. This is a nice bit of continuity because you drive through a battlefield littered with the parts of it, the elevator in Halo 3. Dutch ramps out of the park and crashes down into the city. He lands on the pavement and his vehicle crashes into a wall. A drone lands near him, sending the optics to the place where the rookie found it. There is a good bit of humor where he talks to God about whether or not he will have to do any more flying, and the game switches back to the rookie on the streets at night. It's time to head out and find the next clue as to your squad mate's whereabouts. The superintendent leads you to a gauss turret on a balcony of a building. When you find it, the game puts you in control of Mickey an hour after drop. He comes across a group of soldiers fleeing on foot from a wraith. Help fend off the tanks. There is a scorpion that you are told about. Take control of it and use it to take down the wraiths. The Marines are headed to a rally point near the Naval Intelligence Building, so head there with them. When you get there, Dutch is there waiting for you. He calls you over and you help the Marines stand off against approaching Covenant forces. After doing so, the gate behind them opens and a police officer comes out. He asks if either of them knows how to use explosives, and the two of them follow him. It switches back to the rookie on the streets at night. Head out to the next item left behind by one of your squad mates. On the bridge on the edge of the city, the rookie finds the remains of a remote detonator. The game switches over to Dutch 2 hours after drop. He is helping Mickey plant bombs on the bridge as the Covenant forces march across it. After setting the charges, climb up the tower and use the laptop to trigger the charges. This sets off all the explosives and destroys the bridge and takes out a bunch of Covenant with him. The two of them retreat with the Marines inside another building that is lined with explosives as well. Important data is housed in this building, and you need to keep it out of the hands of the enemy. You're going to destroy this building. Fend off waves of Covenant. I have to wonder if it would be more advantageous to fill the building with as many Covenant as you can and then blow it up, killing them all in the process. That kills two birds with one stone. Anyway, after you fend off the Covenant forces, hop onto the elevator and find more enemies at the top. Clear them out, and a Pelican picks you up. As you are flying away, a police officer asks you if you know someone named Buck. Of course you do. He patches Buck through to the two, and you head off to pick him up. The building explodes behind you, and the game switches back to the rookie on the streets at night. Head out to find the next item left behind by your team. The next item turns out to be a sniper rifle bent in half and hanging from a power line. Retrieving it causes the game to switch control over to Romeo 3 hours after drop. Buck is with him and he tries to contact the rookie. It does not work. The Pelican with Mickey and Dutch approaches, but it gets chased off by Banshees. Buck tries to contact the two. That does not work either. Head out to try to find where the Pelican wound up. Follow Buck into the building from the helipad. You come across a narrow, unstable bridge leading to where the Pelican crashed. Dutch and Mickey are there fighting off the Covenant. Join them. The Pelican is trashed, the pilot is dead, everyone else is okay. Phantoms are approaching. Fend them off. There are various turrets scattered around the Pelican. Use them to fight back against the Phantoms and Banshees and enemy soldiers. Eventually a Phantom approaches. The the platform, and a brute chieftain hops out of it. He attacks the group with a gravity hammer, and he smacks Romeo right in the chest, destroying his rifle in the process. He tosses the rifle over the edge, and it falls down to the power line where the rookie found it. He is about to finish off Romeo when the other three tag team him and take him down. Romeo is seriously injured though, and they help him up and say that they are going to get out of here, but not by air. The game switches back to the rookie on the streets at night. Head off to the next item. It turns out to be a biofoam canister. The game switches to Buck 5 hours after drop. The four of them are traveling through the city. Romeo can barely breathe because he has a punctured lung. Buck sprays inside his armor with the biofoam, allowing him to breathe and walk for now. He tosses it out where the rookie eventually finds it, and they are going to find a train tunnel and walk out of the city. They head underground, but the trains are all trashed. They decide to steal a Phantom instead. Mickey secures the Phantom. Grab a Banshee and protect it. The group run across more of the squid creatures that you saw earlier, and you find what appears to be nests for them. Take out the nests. Hop out of your Banshee to flip a switch, only to discover that the door is jammed. You have to enter on foot. After fighting your way through a bunch of enemies, you eventually come across a switch that opens the door, allowing the stolen Phantom to enter the tunnel. Head out the other side, you find a scarab. Using a Banshee, take it out. After taking out its legs, hop on it and destroy it for good. You run into a tunnel with squid nests. Blowing up one sets off a chain reaction that destroys all the others. Fly out the other side, fly your Banshee right underneath the Phantom, and it uses the tractor beam to pull you on board. Romeo figures that the tunnels that you were thinking about taking are packed with drones, and he is glad that he did not take that route. Buck figures he knows where Dare is, and he orders Mickey to head back into the city and land. The game switches back to the rookie on the streets at night, and he gets communication from Dare requesting immediate assistance. Head out to help her. Enter a building leading underground. Hop down the elevator shaft using the cable to descend. When you reach the bottom, you receive another transmission from Dare. She's on sub-level 9. You're on sub-level 7. You have a ways to go. You run into a police officer who thanks you for helping fight off the Covenant that had him cornered. He had been trying to get down to the lower levels to check on his team, but the city's superintendent did not grant him access. It does grant it to you, though. Hop down to level 8. As soon as you open the door, drones fly out. It looks like your team might have been right about the tunnels being infested with them. Take them out and hop down. The officer follows you and fights alongside you. He is going down to level 9 as well. Open up the door to level 9 and hop down. When you reach this point in the story, one of two things can happen. If you did not find all the terminals in the city above, you will hear the officer get attacked and killed by drones above you. If you did find them all, he hops down with you, and you can follow him to get the final terminal. It is the only way to reach it. When you play through the game the first time, you will more than likely hear him die, unless you are following a guide, of course. If you do find them all, you follow him into a restricted area. If you stay there too long, he will turn hostile, forcing you to kill him. Later on, Dare contacts you again. She thinks she is talking to Buck. She apologizes for not being more honest with him about the mission. You come across a locked door. She is on the other side of it. She lets you in, and she follows you. She mentions that some idiot blew up the building above, awakening a hive of drones. Yeah, about that. This day ain't turning out so bad after all. Anyway, the superintendent that runs the city is housed right in the middle of the hive of drones. Her mission is to secure the data from it. In order to get the data, she needs to go through the hive, and she believes that it is too big of a task for one person. Make your way through the hive to the superintendent with her. You come across a group of Covenant trying to break into the door to get to it. Take them out, and the superintendent lets you in after they are dead. After entering the center, the superintendent initiates emergency shutdown. One of the squid creatures is here. It turns out that they are a slave race of the Covenant called the Engineers. This one has been accessing the superintendent. They are biological supercomputers, and this one combined its data with that of the superintendent. The Covenant arrived to try to kill you and take the engineer back. Buck arrives as well, and Dare tells him not to shoot any engineers. Buck joins you as you escort the engineer back out of the building. Dare tells Buck that the engineer knows what the Covenant is after. She asks him if he has killed any, and he reluctantly says he has, saying, "How was I supposed to know?" She slugs him and says it was for abandoning the mission. She kisses him and said it was for coming back. He had reason to think that she was dead, so I don't really think that he was abandoning the mission. But whatever. Anyway, they both thank the rookie for his help with all this. As you exit the building, Dare hangs back with the engineer while you and Buck clear a path. It is now daylight. You eventually come across an elevator that leads up to a highway? Okay, that's just weird. Buck and Dare argue with each other when a Covenant carrier shows up. The engineer climbs inside a garbage truck, get a Warthog, and escort it down the highway. This is a lot like the Warthog run in 1 and 3, but it is much slower pace and not as good because it is an escort mission. It's an intense final mission, though. Another Covenant cruiser flies overhead. They are headed for a dig site outside the city. That should sound familiar to anybody that played Halo 3. You eventually find a Gauss Warthog, and you could use the extra firepower. Hop in it and continue until you find a Scorpion tank. Switch vehicles yet again. One of the Covenant carriers starts charging its excavation beam inside the city. They fire the beam and destroy part of the highway. Buck tells the rest of the crew to fly the stolen ship to a new location to pick them up. A scarab climbs up out of the water and it notices you. It fires on the garbage truck, and the garbage truck winds up on its last legs. Take the first exit off the highway and head up to the building and wait for evac. Phantoms arrive and drop off soldiers. Fight them off as you wait for Mickey, Romeo, and Dutch to arrive in the Phantom. When they do, head up the stairs to where they land and beam you up. The engineer is reluctant to get onto the ship, and you have to force it. Buck pushes it into the tractor beam. The Phantom flies away. Buck lays Romeo down and gives him more meds. He sends the engineer to the cockpit to aid Mickey. It seems the Covenant have found what they're looking for. The Phantom flies off as more ships arrive. The game ends and credits roll. There is an epilogue after the credits. 1 month after the drop, Dare is escorting Sergeant Johnson, my man, through the Oni orbital facility.
Don't worry.
Lord Hood has given him clearance to see the engineer. He says that he knows what they like. The engineer has access to the Covenant BattleNet. He sits down with the creature and he wants to know what the brutes are looking for. This must mean that there is at least a month between the events of Halo 2 and 3. Johnson is with you the entire time in Halo 3, and he dies at the end. The game takes place during the events of Halo 2. That gives plenty of time for Johnson and Arbiter to make their way back to Earth. But this does beg the question, why does the Master Chief fall out of the sky at the beginning of Halo 3? This is a month after the game takes place, right? That must mean it's a month after he arrived back on Earth on the Prophet's ship, unless I'm missing something. You probably noticed that this story is much smaller in scale and scope than the 3 previous games. This is not a grand save-the-world adventure like those games were. This is a much smaller mission to retrieve data from New Mombasa's superintendent. Its twist with the engineer is also much smaller in scale than something like the Flood in 1 or the Arbiter in 2. It's much more quaint, but I do like it. I think it works for a smaller game. Having said that, this is a far cry from perfect. The first thing that you are likely to ask is, why are there no engineers in New Mombasa levels in Halo 2 or 3? They are an interesting sci-fi concept, but the game kind of retcons those 2 games and shoehorns them into this. They are seen again in Halo Reach, but that might bring up more questions than it answered. If they were in Reach, why weren't they in 1? Furthermore, the rookie story overall is pretty damned not interesting. If you look at the chain of events that lead to the transmission from there, all he does is go from one place to another, pick up an item, examine it, and put it back down. He does this 6 times, and that's his story. He also does not speak at all throughout the entire game. In the 3 previous games, the Chief did not speak during gameplay, but he did speak during cutscenes. In this one, the rookie never says anything at all. When you contrast this with the other characters, it's a little bit odd. Buck, Romeo, Mickey, and Dutch all talk during cutscenes. This makes it a little awkward that the rookie does not speak when others speak to him. It makes you wonder if he is a mute in canon or something. The others even speak during gameplay, which is a change from previous games. They respond to commanding officers giving them orders and transmissions over the radio, which is definitely a bit of a step up from what we got in 1, 2, and 3, where it was a little awkward that Chief never responded to orders or questions directed at him during gameplay. The other big problem with this story is the characters themselves. Buck and Dare are by far the most memorable of the group. They are the easiest to identify because they do have a little bit of personality to them. For Dutch, Romeo, and Mickey, I literally had to write down what their armor looked like to make sure that I got them all right when I was working on this review. This makes it feel like a little bit of a wasted opportunity to tell a smaller and more personal story than previously told in the series. It's hard to do that when the characters are not especially memorable. The superintendent seems to have more personality than the 3 squad mates in particular. It will do things like ring phones and set car alarms off to direct you around the city. Having said that, you probably think I do not like this game's story at all. That's not the case. I do quite like the sci-fi concepts that this does bring up. You spend the entire game thinking that the engineers are bad guys, and you probably kill several on your first playthrough. Then you find out that they're slave races and are cool biological supercomputers.
We've seen them before on other
After that, it occurs to you that the engineers never actually attack you throughout the entire game. They travel with the Covenant, who would attack you on sight, but they themselves never actually attack you. I love this about the story. It makes you want to go back and play through it a second time to try not to kill them. Even though you know that makes it harder because they do cast shields on the Covenant. There is one other aspect to this game's story, and it is the terminals. As you get the terminals spread out across the city, you listen to them or watch them in menus. They play out like an animated comic book, and they tell the story of a young girl named Sadie. It gives you a glimpse of what this place was like before and during the invasion, before everything was evacuated. It's very interesting, and you will learn a lot more about the superintendent this way. This is another aspect of the story that I absolutely love. It takes the desolate and lonely city and injects more life into it by letting you know what it used to be like. It's a great little touch. Given that it tends to retcon things in both Halo 2 and 3, I would say that playing through this game may not be absolutely necessary. It is a side game in that sense. It really does feel like it, but I do think that this story is one that Halo fans should experience anyway. It does not reach the lofty heights of Halo 2 with the character building of the Arbiter, but it's an interesting high-concept sci-fi tale that is quite enjoyable and expertly paced. What about the game's graphics? Have you played Halo 2? It looks like more Halo 2. That's basically what it is. It uses the same engine as that game, and it reuses a lot of the game's graphical assets. The art is the same, the animations are the same, the weapons are mostly the same, the equipment is the same. It really does feel like an expansion pack that it was originally announced as when it was called Halo 3 Recon. I do not blame the dev team for this. They had 14 months to make this game. That is a really short amount of time when larger projects usually had 3 years between major releases. The devs did do something very smart with this game, though. They knew that their engine was a little bit dated at this point, so they set a lot of this game at night. You get a different look at all of the same assets you saw in Halo 3 as a direct result, and it does help the game stand out. It also lends greatly to the game's sense of isolation and atmosphere. It does not look bad at all, but this did come out the same year as a game like Uncharted 2, which does look significantly better. This is a smart move from both graphical and atmospheric standpoint. You will spend a lot of this game looking at the world through the ODST's visor mode. This outlines the entire world in yellow, and it shows on-screen prompts to show you where you need to go next. It creates an interesting look as the intentionally computer-generated look of the visor effect layers over on top of the dark world around you, and you absolutely need it because parts of this game approach pitch black without it. It really does cast everything in a new light. From the sound design standpoint, this is more Halo 3. It reuses a lot of the sound from Halo 3. Everything that was good about the sound in that game is also good about the sound in this game. After all, this game uses the same engine and reuses many assets from that game. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Outside of the gunfire in Halo 3, it sounded fine. You could just copy and paste my discussing the weapon sounds from my Halo 3 review and put it here. It's exactly the same as it was in that game, which is to say the weapons do sound rather weak. The voice acting gets members of the cast of Firefly to come in and voice characters. Nathan Fillion, for example, comes in to voice Buck. They are certainly all good actors, and they definitely do the best with the material that they are given. It's believable voice acting across the board. It's all let down by the characters being underwhelming, especially Mickey, Dutch, and Romeo. Like I said, I had to jot it down to make sure I got all their names correctly. That's not the fault of the voice actors, though. They did try. You can take a guess where this game really shines in the audio department. If you guess the music, you win. Michael Salvatore and Marty O'Donnell return once again to write the score for this game. Would you have it any other way? I know I wouldn't. Their scores for the original 3 games are all excellent, and the score for this game is excellent as well. It is another score where you could make a case for it being the best in the franchise of great scores. It's like arguing which Nobuo Uematsu's score is best, in that there are no wrong answers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this score is 100% original pieces as well. Does the classic Halo theme even appear in this game? I don't recall it. What this music does so well is set the mood and atmosphere. You are exploring a city at night after it has been evacuated. With the exception of Covenant patrols, you are completely alone. And it is very dark. This game's music really drives that home. It is beautiful and haunting as it drives in a sense of isolation and loneliness. It sets the tone of the atmosphere of the game absolutely fucking perfectly, and it ramps up for action pieces and big battles. The score is very different from the previous games because it focuses on atmosphere above all else, but Marty and Michael pull it off perfectly here. They set out to create something different, and they did just that. How does it play then? Well, it plays like Halo 3. If you have played Halo 3, you will be right at home with this game. The weapons from that game come back for this one. The equipment from that game comes back as well. A lot of the vehicles are back, and the driving, flying, and on-foot sections all return in the various levels as well. At its most basic, it's more Halo 3. When you look a little deeper, though, there is more going on than just that. The ODSTs are not Master Chief, and this brings with it multiple changes and tweaks to the gameplay. Your physical attacks are weaker. The arc of your grenades are different. There is head bob when you crouch. You take fall damage. There is no dual wielding. You cannot use items, but enemies can. This particular change is a little strange. Your health does not recharge, meaning you have to rely on health packs. If you know anything about this dog, then you know that I love this about this game. You have a visor mode that helps you see in the dark and point out objectives, and you do not have shields. You do have stamina that runs low before you start taking damage, though. It can still feel like shields, to be honest. The end result of all these minor tweaks and changes is that they all add up. You do not feel like the super soldier that you played as in the previous games. You feel weaker than that, and it makes you play more cautiously than you did in the previous games. You have to relearn how to throw grenades in this game because the arc is different than what you're used to, and you have to keep a closer eye on your health. All of this goes a long way to make you feel like an elite soldier instead of a super soldier with enhanced power armor. So what's new? You have 2 new guns and a new grenade. There is a silent SMG that is less powerful than the assault rifle, but it is more precise and has a zoom mode. It's a nice weapon and you will use it a lot throughout the game. There is a new pistol as well. It has a zoom mode like the Halo 1 pistol, but it is not overpowered like that is. You can kill jackals and grunts with it, but you should go for headshots with it. It requires you to be more precise with your shots. There is a new fire grenade as well. It deals damage to enemies over time if they stand near it. It's a fun addition. You probably noticed one common enemy in Halo that I did not mention at all. The Flood. The Flood do not appear in Halo 3 ODST at all. Thank fucking God! They cannot ruin any level as a direct result of just being there and having to deal with them. Praise God! I kid, but them not being here does go a long way toward me enjoying the entire game instead of liking some of it. I most certainly do enjoy the entire game from beginning to end. This is the very first Halo where I loved every single level of it, and I thoroughly enjoyed every second of all 3 playthroughs that I have done over the years. It sets a wonderful atmosphere that is unique to this game. It is well paced. It gives you every aspect of Halo gameplay that you love. This is one of the best games that Bungie has ever made, and it is my favorite of the Halo games that we have looked at in this retrospective so far. I like the way this game is structured as well. The way it works is the rookie wanders around a hub world from place to place, battling Covenant patrols, finding terminals, and seeking out his squad mates. Every time you find an item left behind by your squad mate, the game transfers to a more linear, typical Halo level as opposed to the more open design of the city. It's pretty cool and it's pretty unique structure to this series. When I look at it through my critical dog's eye, though, the cracks do start to show. The open world is rather barren and empty. There is nothing to do in it outside of fight Covenant, locate weapon caches, find terminals, and hunt down your squad mates. The open world itself is also very small. There's not that much actually here. Inside the caches, you will find mongoose four-wheelers to drive throughout the city. They allow you to get from place to place much faster, but you will frequently run into doors that you need to get off your vehicle to open manually. This might be here to hide loading times, or they might have done it to make the world seem larger than it actually is. It does serve to make zipping around the city on a vehicle more of a pain in the ass than it needs to be, though. You never seem to go too far on a vehicle without running into one. The other problem with the open structure of the game is that the chain of events told in the flashback levels is a linear timeline. There is a certain order in which they happen, and they do tend to lead from one to another. This means that there is no advantage to playing through them in non-linear order. You can do it, but it's pointless. It also breaks up the excellent pacing of the story and breaks up some of the tension. If you see Buck heal Romeo before you see him get seriously injured, you know that he will be fine when you watch him get injured. The tension of will he live is eliminated completely. This can leave the open structure feeling almost pointless. I still do like the structure, but I now like the idea of the structure more than the actual execution. It might have been better if each individual flashback mission in this game was more self-contained so that you could play them out of order and it would not matter at all. That alone would fix the biggest problem with the way this game is structured. Having said all of that, I like this game a whole hell of a lot. This was my third playthrough of it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it all 3 times. This is the game where I started to understand some of what people see in this series, because this was the first game where I never got bored, frustrated, or irritated. I never felt like it had a bad moment. I never felt like any of the levels sucked. It's just an excellent and very fun ride from beginning to end. This game is very short, though, and it has a crisis of identity. This is basically an expansion pack, but Bungie did not sell it as one. When they released it, there were a lot of people very angry with this game. You got a 5 or so hour single player campaign that you can beat in a single afternoon, and the multiplayer included with it is just Halo 3's multiplayer. It only came with one new mode called Firefight. That's not much content here. All of this would be excusable if it was a $40 game at launch, but it wasn't. I think Microsoft looked at Call of Duty 4, saw a short campaign, and thought they could get away with it with Halo, forgetting that that game had a brand new multiplayer mode. This is a smaller package than that was, though. They charged $60 for the equivalent of Fear Extraction Point, Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil, or Half-Life Opposing Force. If you felt ripped off and are put off of this game because of that, your feelings are 100% valid. I got it used at a greatly discounted price a couple of years after launch, so I never experienced that. How is the replay value then? Well, it's certainly less than the previous games. As I previously stated, it did not come with a fully featured multiplayer like 1, 2, and 3 did. It instead came with a disc that was just Halo 3's multiplayer all over again. That is disappointing since the majority of the game's audience had already spent the past 2 years playing this. It did come with Firefight, which is a cool mode. The campaign is also fun to play through more than once, find all the terminals, try not to kill any engineers, play on a higher difficulty. I know I have not played through it for the last time. Halo 3 ODST is a wonderful, if small, experience that I highly recommend, more so than the 3 previous games. So how can you get your hands on it? You have been looking at the Xbox 360 version, but you also can get it via Xbox One backwards compatibility. Unlike Halo 3, it is not enhanced for X. But it does run better and look sharper on the Xbox One than it does on the original console. It's a good way to play it. The best way to play Halo 3 ODST, however, is the Master Chief Collection version. As of writing this, it has not come to PC, but it is coming. It is worth noting that the Xbox One version of the MCC does not include this game. You have to pay an extra $5 to get it, but that is a small price to pay for an excellent remaster. It looks sharper, it runs at 4K, it has HDR support, it runs at 60 FPS. This is the best feeling and best playing version of the game with ease. I highly recommend playing this version of the game, especially if you have an Xbox One X. Thank you everybody for watching. I like this game a lot, and I have been looking forward to reviewing it. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to the next one. How do you feel about this game? Do you like it a lot like I do, or did you feel burned by the original price tag and got put off by it? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Give this video a like and a share, that would help me out a lot, and subscribe. Make sure you ring the bell to ensure that you get updates from me. Talk to you later, everybody. Doomdog out.